Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. My name is Katie Peace. I'm the Director of Communications for the Preservation League of New York State. And today we are here for an author talk with Elizabeth and Ethan Finkelstein of Cheap Old Houses fame. They're going to talk about their brand new book, which we're very excited about. And I want to say thank you to the sponsors of our Preservation Book Club series, the Peggy N. and Roger G. Gary Charitable Trust. If you've made your way to this webinar but are not familiar with who the League is, we are New York's statewide nonprofit focused on investing in people and projects that champion the essential role of preservation in community revitalization, sustainable economic growth, and the protection of our historic buildings and landscapes. The League does this work in every corner of New York State in lots of different ways, including providing grants that jumpstart preservation projects. We advocate for preservation policy at the local, state, and federal level. We provide technical assistance for all sorts of preservation issues. We collaborate with colleagues across the state, award excellence in historic preservation, draw attention to at-risk historic sites, especially through our 7 to Save program, and we offer engaging virtual programs like the one that you are tuning into tonight. We also have lots of resources on our website, and if you go to our website in the top navigation, you'll see resources. If you click on that, you'll find lots of good stuff, including resources for historic homeowners, which I'm assuming many of you in the audience tonight will be particularly interested in, so you can find that on our website. If you have something that's not there and you want to share it, please send it my way. It's an iterative process, so we're always looking for new tips and tricks to share with people, so you can find all that stuff on our website and you can get in touch there. And with that, we're going to talk about why we're here. Cheap Old Houses, an unconventional guide to loving and restoring a forgotten home by Elizabeth and Ethan Finkelstein. This is an amazing book. I'm so excited about it, and I'm so excited that Elizabeth and Ethan are here to talk about it tonight. Within these pages, you'll discover sprawling Victorian mansions, Italianate-style farmhouses, off-the-beaten-path cabins, and even old churches, schoolhouses, and hydropower stations turned into residences. You'll meet the people behind these amazing cheap old house restorations, and you'll find information on the details to preserve in historical houses, from pocket doors to plaster walls, butler's pantries, and you'll find hundreds of beautiful photographs capturing these homes in all their glory. And I truly agree. These photos are beautiful. Get the book to read it and admire it, but also just like leave it on your coffee table because it will be a crowd pleaser for anybody who comes over. Following Elizabeth and Ethan's presentation about this book, they'll be joined in conversation by Reagan Leslie, whose home is featured in the book as well. So a little bit about who we're going to be hearing from tonight. Elizabeth and Ethan Finkelstein are the creators of the Instagram account Cheap Old Houses, which they started back in 2016. They've since grown that brand into a show on HGTV. The second season or second series is coming out soon, and we're very excited to see what they have in store for us. Elizabeth has a master's degree in historic preservation, and for their work, they both earned the Pillar of New York Award from the Preservation League a couple of years ago. They've been featured widely, including in publications such as New York Magazine, Architectural Digest, the Financial Times, Forbes, BuzzFeed, and Business Insiders, and on programs such as The Drew Barrymore Show, Today, and Good Morning America. They live with their son and rescue dog in upstate New York, where they are restoring their own cheap old farmhouse. And then following their presentation, they will be joined by Reagan Leslie, preservationist, interior designer, and founder of Leslie Tyler Design and Construction. She's based out of Peoria, Illinois. Her professional work in preservation began in 2019 and evolved out of her experience stewarding her 1908 Tudor revival. Reagan established her boutique firm rooted in meeting the unique needs of Peoria's historic infrastructure and understanding the nuances and cadence of the old home steward. Reagan has sought to impact Peoria's historic and preservation initiatives by connecting local resources to an ever-expanding national network of professionals dedicated to making a societal impact through preservation. She also spearheads Black House 7, a business-to-business consulting firm aimed to provide support for companies and brands seeking opportunities to support their clients in historic spaces. She serves as a trustee on the Peoria Historic Commission and Peoria's Historic Society, and she'll be the one to kind of get all of your questions into the conversation with Elizabeth and Ethan once they all get on screen. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Elizabeth and Ethan, and they're going to talk a little bit about Cheap Old Houses, the book.
Thanks,
Hi.
Katie.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Katie. Thank you so much for that intro. And we just want to take a moment to thank the Preservation League for having this talk tonight. The Preservation League has been an amazing resource for us, I think most personally, since we've lived in our old house. They have helped us navigate the wonderful world of tax credits for historical homeowners, which is definitely something that anybody owning a historical house, especially one in a National Register of Historic District or one that could be eligible for a National Register Historic District, should know about, because it's an amazing financial incentive. So thank you so much, Katie. And we are very excited to be joined tonight by Reagan. Before we start, I just want to shout out Christina Paletto, who was our co-writer on the book, and also Kelly Marshall, whose incredible photos, I think, really make this book something truly special in the old house space. We have a presentation that we're going to bring up to screen share.
And I think one of the first questions that I was kind of even posing to Elizabeth before we got started was like, why cheap old houses? Why does the world need the book Cheap Old Houses? And I think, like, in a very, very broad sense, I think that the world really needed this book because we're having an issue of home ownership. There is a problem of the home ownership is becoming more and more unattainable. The American dream is getting, if the American dream to you is owning real estate and owning your piece of like old house heaven, or just any house for that matter nowadays, it's really it's kind of drifting away from our fingertips. If you live in an expensive city, New York City, I think 60% of people live in apartments and they rent. And they're and this dream is, you know, in a way moving beyond us. So I think finding, how do we afford homes nowadays, and how do we really just kind of take this into our own hands? I think for us, this is a movement that allows preservation to kind of answer this question. It allows stewards of their own old house to answer this question, to afford something really affordably, and you know, I think create passion for yourself, and then also give you the most rewarding experience of your lifetime, as many of the homeowners in this book have kind of shown.
Yeah, so this is really a book about, everyday houses across America. These are not the sort of great landmarks that we think of when we think of preservation in America, but these are the everyday homes that had the everyday rooms that are so familiar in American society. And I think because of that are so incredibly kind of vulnerable to being lost, because they're common and they're not considered something that are worthy of preservation. But what we're seeing, what we've noticed in the preservation movement, at least through the lens of cheap old houses, is that people are really on the ground getting their hands dirty. These are people who are restoring these homes, celebrating the beauty of the imperfect, which is so much of what this book is about. And, really just kind of looking at it through the lens of a dream. So we arranged the table of contents of this book really by the idea of dreams. Is your dream to own a cheap old house and restore a giant mansion in the middle of the field, that you can afford and that needs you and that will allow you to learn and work with your hands? Is your dream to have a cheap old farmhouse, which was our dream, which we managed to do?
Which is funny that we just saw the movie Funny Farm. I don't know how it took us so long to see this movie, but we just watched it this weekend, and we're restoring our own cheap old farmhouse right now. We were actually like, how come they're funny? Then Funny Farm, the house wasn't more messed up and more needing more restoring.
The house was definitely the best part of everything that happened to them. But I think other people are interested in the idea of owning a time capsule, something that's really frozen in time. And certainly the time capsule homes we show on Cheap Old Houses really kind of resonate with people. And I think that goes against the sort of general pervading idea that younger people, at least the Instagram generation and younger, are not interested in old things. They most certainly are. This is a very design savvy generation that wants things that are unique and that feel like they have a story behind them. So I think time capsules especially resonate. And everybody loves a cabin. And then I think the idea of unconventional homes, we've seen a lot of people whose dream is to restore, live in an old church. We even have a hydropower station that this woman bought for $93,000 and moved into and converted into a home. So we thought long and hard about how to arrange this book. Do we do it by style of home? Do we do it by geography? And I think really at the end of the day, what we do in the idea of cheap old houses is so much about changing our life and escapism and using preservation to solve this great issue that Ethan was talking about of the unattainability of homeownership, that it really came down to what is that dream.
And what's so cool is in this book, all of these houses, if you combine them, might be more affordable than a townhouse in New York City. One townhouse. It's quite amazing that, you know, it's a different approach to, you know, a design book or a specific restoration book or even a financial book. It's really kind of all of the above and none of the above. I think, you know, we didn't want something that was super shallow for an interior design book and just have beautiful pictures. I think this movement, the Cheap Old Houses Dust has such meaning and depth and just heart that it you know, and it speaks to so many other people. You know, we have 2.6 million followers on Instagram. Hundreds of people have purchased these houses off of the Instagram page. And we featured on the show many different people. And then in our next season, we're going to be able to show you how to restore these houses.
So the idea of the lost art of imperfect living is something that came to us as we were kind of working through the themes of this book. And it is the idea that our life, our home is not an Instagram swipe. And as much as we love Instagram and have found that Instagram certainly has a place in the world, it is certainly not in the idea of quick transformations in these homes. And this book, in a sense, is a permission slip for you to take your time, to give a bit of a middle finger to the interior design industry that it has to take responsibility for the fact that it's all about new trends, commodities, buying things quickly, gutting, replacing, and things do not last. And so this is really kind of saying there's another way to go about this. And certainly the 25 people that we've profiled in this book have really proven that not only can this be done and can you get creative about your own circumstances, because every single person in this book came on this train in a different way, but also that it's immensely rewarding and it changed them for the better. And so I think the diversity in the types of people, the ages of the people, the sort of geographic locations, the styles of homes, the size of homes, the neediness of the homes goes to show that preservation, at least through the lens of what's actually happening on the ground every day with people using their own hands to restore their homes, does not look one way, and there is not one way to restore a house. And so I think this is, in a way, we kind of call it preservation light. It's a way to kind of bring people into the magic of the possibility of this, and trick them into finding a life that is immensely soulful and meaningful. So we've broken this into chapters, and we'll go through, you know, one sort of profile in each one of them just to give you a little bit of a flavor. This is a stairway in a $150,000 giant. I don't even know how big is that.
150,000. Yeah, you said it.
Is it
right.
15,000 square feet, this giant mansion in Orange, Massachusetts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. 15,000. You said that?
Yeah.
10,000 for every 1,000 square feet.
You know, one of our favorite couples that you'll be familiar with if you watched our TV series were Randy and Dave in Towanda, Illinois, who actually found their giant cheap old house, which is one of those giant mansions in a field. I mean, it's completely otherworldly. They found it on Cheap Old Houses, and it had been on the most endangered list in Illinois for years and years. Many people had tried to do it before them, and through creative financing and figuring out ways to open up their space to the public, they've been able to really kind of make this happen. And this house, I think, is an example of the kind of home that it's not just their private home. It means something so much to the community, and the way that they've invited the community in to share it, and also be able to make money through that to be able to feed back into the home, you know, is a really, really inspiring story for us. They actually, not a single room in the house was livable when they bought it. They camped out on the porch for 3 months to try to bring one room up to speed.
Before kids. I just
before
want to say, because doing it
kids,
with
you're in a whole
kids,
different camp.
exactly. I don't want to take on this type of project.
One of the things that is not in the book that we'll show you here tonight are some of the before and after photos, just to give you a sense of really how much work has gone into a lot of these homes. And the sort of deep respect that's clearly being shown through the very hands-on restoration of these houses. By the way, Randy and Dave did not come at this with a trust fund. Randy is a post office worker. Dave is a designer. And they have done most of the work on this house themselves, and they are chipping away at it little by little.
I would say most of the people in the book are not of massive wealth, unless people are hiding, that they're Warren Buffett's cousins or something. But these are all real people stories, doing real things. This is a really cool preservationist story, from just the fact that this house was $25,000 and it had murals all over the inside. It is an amazing example of just someone seeing like this needs to be saved, and it's on the open market. I mean, that's the wild thing about a lot of these houses, is that they are just literally sitting there waiting to be something to be done with them. And if it was in a more endangered area, like a more populous city where prices were really high, I mean, these things get demolished every single day. If you're on Cape Cod, if you're on LA, if you're in New York City, I mean, we have so much of the built environment in New York City that has been transformed into super big glass towers. But this building was just standing here waiting to be snapped up for the sum of $25,000.
It's amazing. And these murals have survived. One of my favorite things about this photo is that, and I wrote this in the caption, the staircase is hooked up to the original central vacuum system, which uses pipes that run through walls and an on-off button in the basement, all throughout the stairway. So it's like an original central vacuum hooked up to that stairway, which just boggles my mind. It's an incredible home and really a time capsule. And Lucas and his fiancee Kindle have been so far trying to collect from neighbors and from anybody that will answer them on their Facebook page original pieces of the home that have been taken out that they've been able to find and put back. You know, everybody says that their book has an Easter egg. Our Easter eggs are painter's tape that are in all the rooms. We by no means ever wanted to indicate that these homes are finished. The work is the celebration. The process is the great thing about them. We did not want to write another interior design book that you would open up and feel bad about yourself for not having everything perfect. So we left a few of the images signaling that work is still being done in this.
Yeah,
in these
there's
houses.
wires, there's little holes in the wall. I think that's really the fun thing. We didn't Photoshop all that stuff out. That stuff would normally, any wires, any weird things that are not meant to be seen in a design oriented fashion, we left in there on purpose.
It's important for us to show that people live in these homes. Here's Reagan's house. Reagan will be moderating questions later, but wanted to include her home because I think what inspires us so much about Reagan is that she actually changed her career, changed her life. Her entire sort of passion in life has been shaped through the nurturing of this beautiful Tudor Revival home that she has in Peoria, Illinois. And I think what speaks to us most about the design is that she changed nothing in the house. She didn't, rip down the original detail or anything like that. She just enhanced it, and it feels so fresh and modern while still being so incredibly respectful to the architecture of the home.
She's such an amazing interior designer and artist, and add such an amazing layer to preservation and showing people that you can take an old house and make it very fresh and modern while not making it stodgy. I think what's really, really cool about her story, in addition to what Elizabeth said, is that we know other people who've changed their careers based on their houses. So we have another friend who's a slate person who has now become a slate roofer, and they are preserving slate roofing. We have other people who have dedicated their lives now to restoring old windows based on their cheap old houses. And there's kind of countless more people who have changed their careers based on their cheap old houses. Their cheap old houses are changing them.
And the use of modern art throughout Reagan's home, I think, has always inspired us to show how contemporary pieces can really make architectural details pop even more. And, the marriage of contemporary furniture in old houses is just a match made in heaven. Moving on to cheap old farmhouses, one of our personal favorite sections. And, we wanted to highlight Larissa and Chris here, who actually found their craftsman bungalow for free, picked it up and moved it 70 miles. It looks like it's been there forever, but they had to rebuild the entire porch after the move, and have really tried to make the home feel as if it had been there forever. This green light shown in this picture was a Facebook Marketplace find. Um, you know, there were just pieces that they had collected all the time that just made so much sense when they put them in the house. For instance, this built-in didn't have a back on it when the house was moved, and they opened up old architectural catalogs, and tried to create something that looked like it had been there forever. They also have a working farm on the property, and they're just, I mean, they save everything, cars, houses, animals, all of it. Moving into time capsules, this is one of our favorite kitchens. In fact, we have we have many, many photos of this one particular kitchen in Toledo, Ohio. That really just required nothing except don't mess it up. It's a perfect time capsule of a Victorian era kitchen. And in fact, when the owners saw the house, they fell so in love with the kitchen that they said, if we don't buy this house, this kitchen's going to be gone. Someone's going to ruin it. And I think the same could be said for Kamaria and Dakari, our friends in Detroit, Michigan, who purchased a colonial revival home for $110,000. It has a giant backyard behind it. And what they loved as much as the home was the idea that they could grow food in their community, to give back to their community that has a lack of fresh produce available for residents of the community. And so they looked at their cheap old house and they thought, how can we use this, and how can we preserve this, and how can we also give back to the community while doing so? I think what makes this house so wonderful, perhaps our favorite thing about it, is how little they had to do. I think that we wanted to put a book out there that had sort of the least dramatic transformations you could possibly get, because we wanted you to believe that what you might have might be good enough and you might learn to love it for the time being.
We posted their story on Instagram and it got over 1,000 comments of like, we need more of this in the design world and less of like the $1 million like design transformations that seem completely impossible to most humans on Earth.
Yeah, throughout the book, we have sprinkled at the end of every profile, there's something that we love in the book. In this case, it's vintage tile. We give a little history of vintage tile, and then we give resources for where to find either repro historical tile or actually the actual authentic thing. And of course, it wouldn't be a cheap old houses book if there wasn't a pink bathroom somewhere. Some of the before and after photos of their house, I think, are just so great because look, hardly anything has changed, and yet it's every bit a home. And we love how they've just loved what they had and worked with it. I think if more people could approach their houses that way,
So
we'd
good.
be fighting many fewer battles in preservation. Bethany and Joe live in North Manchester, Indiana. And when you see these photos of their incredible 1930s home, you will understand why we had to include it as well. This mint green Art Deco bathroom is out of this world. And then it includes all the things that bungalows should have, such as phone nooks. I mean, this was the era of building in all the things for efficiency in your family into the house. And it was also the time when the short-lived moment that didn't live long enough, if you ask us, of colored fixtures in kitchens. And they have this incredible American standard jadeite double drain board sink. And here's where we also wax poetic about colored fixtures. We're going to move pretty quickly through this because I think we're getting to 6:30. But we also feature a mid-century modern house in Texas. Our friend Betsy Sweeney, who restored her house for $18,000, that she purchased for $18,500 in Wheeling, West Virginia, through a renovation loan. And just to give you a sense of how the house looked when she purchased it, this is what it was: the dining room today, the kitchen, the bathroom. We could talk about cabins all day long. This is an 1870s old men's hunting club purchased for $82,000 in the woods in Norway, Maine. That looks like it hasn't been touched since that door was closed. We have Mandy, who purchased a $93,000 hydropower station and converted it into her home. And it's on 5 acres on the river, and it's the most serene, quiet place you will ever imagine. That's what it looked like when she purchased it. That was the entryway. In the kitchen. Of course, the dogs are the unsung heroes of cheap old houses. I was thinking, shoot, I should have made a slide of all the dogs that appear in all the profiles, but here's one. And he is the only dog I know that has a sunken living room. So he's pretty stylish.
And then this is our dream cheap old house. You know, and I think all of these houses, we hope somewhere in here, it really motivates and impacts you to find the capacity and thoughtfulness to do this and get creative on a project of your own. Hopefully it's cheerleading you along the way. This book and or able to motivate you to just go out there and find, even if it's an expensive house, just go find a fun project and go love on it. This is our cheap old 1790s house. We're doing a massive renovation on it. This is a house that's on 10 acres. There's a cemetery from the 1700s on it, and we are finishing up the exterior hopefully this year, and we're going to start to jump into the interior next year. I have to go paint some windows later that were or tomorrow to put into the back addition that we're adding onto this building.
This was a house that we saw, and I don't think we would have felt confident enough to do it had we not started an Instagram feed and were inspired right back by all the people that started purchasing homes off of our Instagram feed. And through them and seeing that they could do it, we felt we could do it too. And it's honestly been the greatest thing we have ever done. And that concludes our presentation. So Reagan, if you are there, feel free to hop on.
I am here. Let's see. Can you see me? Hear me okay?
See you. Hi.
Hi. Well, thank you for that. I just enjoy, well, obviously, as you know, talking about everything, especially slow design and preservation, which I think this book does a marvelous job at. No, and I agree with all of those things about the design industry and taking your time and enjoying what's already there, which is half the battle that I have dealing with clients myself. So yes, if anyone has any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. I'm going to get started. So I just want to kind of kick everything off. I know that you have done an incredible job of trying, I think you call it preservation light, or making preservation something that's accessible and you can get started kind of where you're at. I think oftentimes, especially those that may be new to the world of preservation in old houses, feel as though they don't have like the knowledge or the chops or the money specifically. So if someone is like, okay, this is my first home that I need to live in, maybe I can't camp out on the porch. What would you say are the things in a cheap old house that are kind of like, okay, bare minimum for a beginner? If you're taking on a cheap old house, like what should I be looking for or looking at in terms of assessing if this is something that's viable?
Yeah.
I think the roof is very important because of water. We don't like water in our buildings. I would say straight floors are ideal. I think, you know, if you live in a cold climate, I'm definitely a fan of HVAC and heating. If there is heating, it's definitely preferable if you have to live in the house. You know, I think it's really up to how are you funding it and what are you doing? Are you, you know, able to use are you using bank funding? If you are, you need to have the base necessities of a kitchen, heating, electric, nothing really leaking. You need to get an inspection and it needs to be approved by the loan officer.
I think one of the things that we've talked a lot about financing these cheap old houses. And I think a lot of people go in and they say, well, it doesn't qualify for traditional financing, therefore I'm giving up. I think you need to go in assuming that a lot of these houses may not have working kitchens. They may not have the basic things that are needed in order to qualify for traditional financing. And most of the people in our book have figured out a way to do it anyway. And so it is really an issue of getting creative with the financing. And Lise, who's actually works with us and bought a cheap old house, she's featured in the book in Detroit. She took advantage of a special program in Detroit specifically that focuses on first-time home buyers that you have to put very little or maybe even zero down. I'm not sure. Betsy in Wheeling, West Virginia, who we talked about, took advantage of a renovation loan. Other people have, purchased it in cash, or as in the case of Duncan Manor, they've started a nonprofit. And they've gotten money through that by opening their house up to the public as a nonprofit. So there are so many different ways you can do financing, and I think getting creative is important.
Absolutely. I'm finding the rest of a question that was into the chat, but the beginning of it was, how do you break apart the big ticket items so that you don't go broke? Because that is also, if you have to get creative with the financing, me personally have done is a lot of it's just cash kind of as you go. So I guess, how would you suggest, and maybe just start with those things that Ethan said, roof, heating, all of those things. But I guess I would love for you to elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think, we've done a ton of cheap old houses now that really, they could use a lot of underlying structural things in them. But they don't have to be tackled first, like electrical and painting. And yes, there needs to be a new roof, but it's 20 years old and it still could last another 5-10 years. So you can get into the house and budget for that at a later date. I think taking on the project that is of the scale and scope that you can accommodate, I think, is the most important thing. Have some friends. What I did was, when we first bought our cheap old house, I was like, I just hit up a architect and I was like, these are the things that I think it needs. Give me the pricing for all this stuff. And like, what am I even up against here? So I think having a friend, a contractor, someone who can just give you a little bit of a sense of that. I think you can bring an inspector, you can bring a contractor, but I think for us, another thing is understanding state programs. Like we bought a house that is in a district, a national trust
National
registered district, and it allows for 20% off of anything that you're doing, which is the most incredible tool. Since we're in New York State, we're talking to New York State Preservation League. I think this is a massive tool that this organization specifically focuses on, helps to fund. And if you can find a cheap old house in one of these districts, it's like...
Which we post all the time. I think I posted 3 in the last couple days that are National Register districts.
We actually had to tell 2 people on our new program that they were in one and that you can get 20% off. Like, they didn't know, their agent didn't tell them. So it's kind of like this unknown little secret. 2 out of 8 people, which is actually a decent percentage if you think about it, of the people that we featured. So
yeah, and I would also say that patience is really key. I think the first year in which you live in your house, you're probably going to interview a whole bunch of people. You're going to talk to a lot of people, and you might feel like you're not getting anywhere. And then you will. I think it took us a really long time to find the person that we really trusted at our farmhouse. But before that, it was like, is this ever going to happen? And it will feel really frustrating. And then you will get there. And then it'll be the best thing you ever did. And then you'll have your contacts. And then that person will recommend someone. And you'll just kind of start the ball rolling, like anything.
Yep. That was the follow-up question, how to find reputable contractors. And like you said, I feel like it is like a dating thing though. So and I don't know what the rule of thumb is, but I always start people with, or prospective contractors, with something small.
exactly.
And then I kind of see, and then, we can progress from there, but it's like dating. So you might think you're in love and then you realize it's not, but, and then
I think
word of mouth.
I think it's like giving birth. Like you give birth and then you have a moment where you're like, what did I just do? I'm never going to sleep again. I'm crying all the time. And then you're like, wait, this is the greatest thing I ever did. Okay,
Yep.
like I'm over that now and I got through it. And I think I feel like restoring a cheap old house is similar. And then you just want to do it all over again because it's
Well,
so
and
great.
exactly. And I also feel that old houses can take a little bit too. Like, I think the hesitation, at least when I was restoring my first house, was that I was afraid to mess it up. So it was like I was afraid to make a mistake or do something wrong. And I
You're
guess I
gonna.
always just preface that, yeah, like you, and not necessarily make a mistake, but like it's a process that you're learning from all the time. And so that is kind of like taking off the pressure a little bit from feeling like you have to get it right every single time, and it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah, Daniel Cantor, whose house is also featured in our book, said that. I think he's quoted in the book as saying, like, do not be afraid to make mistakes. You're gonna make them. And most things you do, I mean, unless you like burn your house down or something, which is probably not gonna happen, most things are fixable, right? Like you can reverse it, you can fix it, you can strip the paint off, like it's gonna be okay. Just try.
Yeah, yeah. The effort. That is the beginning. Let me see, make sure I didn't, because I think we've got all of that. They were talking about tax credits. I know Katie linked those in the chat for resources if you're in New York State. And then, yes, so Bethany Paris said, or Parisi, I'm sorry, said finding success on social media. So because you obviously have created this entire social media tribe of old house enthusiasts, which I feel like you just post a story and ask a question and there's going to be 15 people with helpful, like, well, try this or try that. So how has social media, in terms of being able to connect with old house enthusiasts, been valuable, and then how might people be able to use those in their own projects?
Oh my gosh. I think when I think about my parents restoring, so I grew up in a cheap old house that my parents restored, and it was a constant project. And I think that my mother had to do that, like with a quarterly magazine that would land with about like woodworking, and she had to go to the library and take books out, and that was it. And now we can go on and how much quicker and how much easier it is to do this because we can live through other people's trial and error and mistakes, and that's incredible. So we're already such a leg up on prior generations in doing this. And I think technology has been great for old house restoration in that sense.
I think specifically, obviously YouTube, I think would be a very big place for folks. I think what people do is they put their own house restoration on Instagram and then they just follow a bunch of people who are like them. If you are interested in doing social media as a partial career or not, it might be a good tool for you to kind of connect with like-minded folks. There's a Facebook group called Our Old House, which is actually it's amazing. There's colonial house preservationists on Facebook. There's Greek revival enthusiasts. I think I'm a part of that group. There's a group for literally every geeky architectural style thing need. And then, on Our Old House, for example, people are like, well, what do you do to save money on your windows and da da da? And literally 1,000 people will comment. It's overwhelming. Or if you tell someone, hey, I had someone quote me a project and it was like $87,000, you're like, and then everyone's like, yeah, he's trying to rob you. Like you'll just get all this amazing feedback that you never, you couldn't have had, in another forum, I guess.
And I think to the point, I think someone asked a question about how do you get started sharing your restoration online? I think, honestly, I'm so glad that back when we started Cheap Old Houses, we just didn't quit. I think that there are so many accounts that I see pop up and they do it for 3 months and then they quit. It's really just, sticking to it.
The way we do it for ourselves, our restoration account is Fear No Fixer for our farmhouse. So you can see kind of us getting into the nitty gritty. We just literally use it as a journal. It's more for us at the end of the day to look back on and see and document. Elizabeth actually prints me out every Christmas. I hope I'm getting one. A photo album of all the Fear No Fixer like posts. So I can actually have it in real time, but it's sort of just like a journal of like what the year was and what, transpired over the year.
Which is so important because it's great, Reagan. I'm sure you do this too. I'm sure you look back at like your initial post when you bought the house and you're like, okay, I have come really far. It's
Yeah.
really nice to be able to see that.
Yeah. Well, and I always think that you're always you're still evolving in it. So like there was that one time that I'd look and be like, oh, it's done. And then I'm like, no, I was still evolving. So I'm just eager to find out what it's going to be, in a few years. But that is to keep it in perspective, because sometimes the day to day when you're right up close to it, and like you said, everything's going wrong and it seems like nothing's going right. Sometimes you need that kind of 50-foot view to keep it all in perspective and know that you are making progress.
Right.
I did have a question come through from Katie Andres, who was talking about when they bought their crumbling 1868 farmhouse outside of Rochester. They had issues finding an insurance company that was willing to insure it. So her question was, are there insurance companies that specialize in and/or welcome clients with cheap old houses?
That's a really good
That's
question.
a great question.
Insurance is becoming such a problem. I just have to say that I'm glad that we're not in Florida. I have nothing against Florida, but I think there's so much massive issues with insurance happening in the world today. I think they're dealing with a ton of hurricanes down in Florida. There's so many natural issues that we're dealing with just as a society. I think I guess in terms of our personal experience, I'm trying to think. There's what you can do is you can use a construction loan. That's one thing that we've done instead of using a straight out or insurance. Did I say loan or insurance?
What's a construction? Loan, or is that what you said?
Yeah, I meant
The rehab that I'm working on now.
construction
Yes, that's a
insurance.
construction insurance.
It's a policy for construction, houses under construction. If they're worried about specific items that you may need to get over, I'm not sure if you're actually allowed to live in the home while that is happening, so that might be something you want to look at. But if you need to get over certain things like the roof or the foundation, and then you can put it under this specific policy that allows for more of a fixer-upper type. So I know we use that policy on our non-mortgageable house, or a mortgageable house, I guess, that would be under a traditional policy, homeowners insurance policy. And I think interviewing other insurance companies might be an option. I don't know of a specific company, maybe also looking at local companies. If you're in Rochester, I know we have here in upstate New York where we are, closer to the Vermont border, we have a lot of local policy holders. So I would check in with them.
I'm noticing, hi, Julia. Julia, who bought one of the cheap old houses that we posted a long time ago. She's saying we got Chubb insurance, and State Farm and then someone else is also saying State Farm will also insure landmark designated homes.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, people are
Chubb.
very helpful in the
Everybody's
chat.
saying Chubb. I didn't know about this. Wow.
I don't know about
Thanks,
Chubb.
guys.
I have to check them out. And then Andrea Rebeck. So if she is actually asking about selling, well, she has one to sell. So can you talk a little bit about, from a seller's perspective, you obviously are attracting people that are looking for cheap old houses, but someone has a cheap old house and they want it to be featured. What would that look like?
So, we share cheap old houses for sale on our Instagram account. And so if you have a house that you're selling and it's got to have character. I think our people are really after something that it doesn't have to be in good shape, but it does have to have original character. So if you have one that you're interested in us posting, definitely send us a DM, and we will take a look at it.
And you can also email us at hello@cheapoldhouses.com, the listing or just pictures of the property. If it's over like $150,000, you can use our website Circa Old Houses, which features homes at any price point, but they're all specifically targeting historic house seekers, homeowners who want to find a cheap old house, and people selling their
house,
sorry,
a historical house.
historical house.
Yeah.
I love it. Love it. Okay. I think I'm caught up on questions. Again, just a reminder, if you guys have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A and I can make sure that, Ethan and Elizabeth answer them. Got my little child running around, just don't mind her. So I wanted to talk a little bit about design and preservation and aesthetic and all of that, because I think one of the things, especially even if you were just like a passerby and not necessarily a house enthusiast, one thing about how you've curated the book and just the brand in general is really just embracing what's already there, which I think is different for each house. There's not like an overarching, like, this is the aesthetic, but it's about whatever that aesthetic is of the house and really listening to the house. So, we've talked about obviously the slow crawl just from a financial standpoint, but can you talk about the importance of taking your time and even the choices and design decisions, whether to change something or whether to keep it the same, and how to go about that, especially in a cheap old house?
Yeah, I mean, I think our general rule of thumb when designing a cheap old house is that the bones of the house itself, so anything that's like fixed to the architecture of the house, should be kept and respected. If you move into your house and you're like, I hate this mantle, I hate it so much, live with it for a while. I would say not to take it out, but live with it as long as you possibly can. You probably will grow to love it because you'll realize that it's part of the whole system and design of your home. But then anything that's not fixed to your house, movable items, should reflect you and your personality. And so that's kind of how I think, and that's the best way to make a house feel fresh, is that, and I think Reagan, your house demonstrates that beautifully. And I think like you fell in love with the architecture of your house because you felt like Tudors spoke to you, and therefore your furniture also is something you love and speaks to you, and it kind of all just naturally works together. So that's kind of our rule of thumb. But yeah, I would say live with something. I think this pushing of like really quick work is not only expensive, but it forces people to make, I think, decisions that they will regret at the end of the day. And if you make a decision that you regret, it's okay, you can go back, but just don't throw out the thing that you've ripped out.
Right.
But it really is something that we feel very strongly about pushing back on.
Yeah, and when we're adding something in, I think for us it's like kitchens. We're trying to think of what the house was historically. So we're always starting from the place of history. What is there? What is fixed? We keep it. If it is not painted, we don't paint it. Typically, if it's like woodwork, if it's painted, you can paint it any color. It doesn't matter.
Or you can strip it.
Or you can strip it if you depending on how long you have or whatever. But I think when you're putting something in new, I think looking at historical designs is really like the first. I always kind of say, like, know the rules before you break them. If you know that the house looked like this, would have had a kitchen like this, cool, and then keep adding your layers on in your style onto that. But just know what would have been there. I think for me, I think financially, it's a better decision to put something in that looks more historic. It's really jarring when you go into a house and it's completely like, I don't know, a white kitchen, completely flat, blah, blah, and you're coming in from like the Victorian era and you're like, whoa, like what? Like I just went from the 1890s to the 1990s. Like I think it devalues. Obviously, people want that, but I think if you can nod to it and create that sanitary aesthetic that the 1990s had with white stuff, whatever.
The Victorian era, the 1890s.
Well, no, the 1990s too. But yes.
Well, and it goes back to the classic and timelessness of your cheap old house. So if you listen to the bones of the house, then as opposed to chasing like a trend that is, trending now, it won't be in 10 years or 20 years. So you have to keep that in mind. And I think one thing that old houses have really allowed me to is embrace the individuality that my tastes are not your tastes, and that still is okay. And I love going into homes that feel like home, which I think your book has done a marvelous job at. It's not about, I mean, they're beautiful photos, but the beauty, like you said, is in the process that these homes are going, it's not the end goal. It's not that they're all shiny and brand new. It's that there's beauty in the crumbling of the plaster that is right there in front of you without having to do anything at all. And so I think giving people that ability to say, hey, your pink bathroom is beautiful, you know? So I don't know. That's just one thing that I hope people are able to grasp from that, is not just necessarily from like a design perspective of, I want to emulate this particular photo from, this house, but I want to find my own version of that through just communion with my own home. So
it is interesting because when we were selecting homes for the book, we have our own taste, and there are houses that we are more attracted to than others. But whenever I would see a house whose taste wasn't exactly mine, I was like, that's kind of the point of this book. The point of this book is to show that all styles and all personal styles can work in these houses. And I think I think some of the reasons why people are afraid to take on old houses is they feel like, I don't know, I don't want to live in a museum, or I don't know the vocabulary, I don't know the terminology. And I don't care if you don't know the vocabulary. I really don't care if you don't know the vocabulary. I know a lot of people would think that was horrible of me to say as a preservationist, but if you love the home and you care deeply about it and you have sort of an innate sense of the language of the home, that's really all you need.
I saw something pop up. I'm not sure exactly where it comes from.
It was Kamaria. How do you balance projects and real life children?
Oh my gosh, Kamaria.
I love you. Do you balance them? Because I have my daughter sitting over here in the corner with like earrings from the tree, her ornaments. But
I think it's like anything else. There is, anyone who is, I suppose there are people who have perfected the art of having their children, strip wallpaper next to them and like love doing it. But that has not been our experience. But I don't think that should discourage you from doing this. I think anything you take on that's hard, whether it's running a marathon or, whatever your life goal is, something you've always wanted to do, it's hard. It's going to be hard, and you're going to balance your kids. And if your kids are not doing it with you all the time or super happy about it, you're not doing anything wrong. That's just parenting.
Yes. Well, and it's important too. I think kids absorb, that's where I grew my love, was because my dad was always tinkering and like refinishing this one thing or sanding this one door. And yes, when I was a child, it was like, oh my God, there's dust everywhere. Oh my gosh, this is annoying. It's loud. It's this, it's, but it soaks in. And I think allowing our children to see that it is about the journey and the process and the building is such a powerful teaching tool just from life, in general, that I would just say, Kamari, have grace, and it's going to take time, and you're going to think like, today I'm going to do this one thing and it's going to be, and then you're not, and that's fine. Because ultimately our homes are where we live our lives. And so your children and raising your children are a part of that, living your life. And it shouldn't be, I guess don't put so much pressure on getting it to the end. Is what I would say.
Yeah. And I think too, when they grow up, they might look back and appreciate, and probably this is all things with children, right? I mean, I grew up in a fixer-upper. Ethan grew up going to a 200-year-old farmhouse that his grandparents owned, where he spent his summers. And I think that was the old house that influenced him in his life. But for me, it was like the secret nooks and crannies in that house that just fueled my imagination. And if you had asked me when I was younger, do I love living in a construction project? I don't know what I would have said. Looking back, am I very grateful for the experience my parents gave me? Absolutely. So I think sometimes, even if you're not feeling it in the moment with your, 4-year-old, it doesn't mean that later on in their life, they're not going to just thank you so much for giving them that experience.
I think something that I was just thinking about and trying to concoct and understand, just even within our own, where we tried to put our attention was trying to help ourselves create and think about the businesses that we wanted to make, to allow ourselves to try to be present with our son. He's 9. And I think when we first had Everett, Elizabeth was way more attentive. She was on him. She had an at-home business. I was like driving 2 hours to New York City every single day. It was the complete opposite of what we wanted for our life. So it was literally on both ends of the spectrum of like, what is the intention for how do we want to be present and balance the not existent work-life balance. But I think we kept pushing towards how do we be present and not present. Obviously, there's certain parts of our career that are really not allowing us to be completely present.
That's fine.
Doing the book was one of those things. We were home every single day. And you know, I think you over the career and lifetime, like I think we're constantly still trying to figure
You're
it
figuring
out.
it out all the time.
As they're young, that you need all the grace in the world, as Reagan said.
Yeah.
I love this though. Like I love all the people commenting saying that they grew up in a fixer-upper and now they're getting a master's in historic preservation. I feel like this cause and encouraging people, and this is why I'm not so hung up on making sure people know all the stuff before they get into this world, because I just want people to get into the world. We just want people to just start, just get out there and start loving on these houses. And the more people we can inspire to do that, I think that just, and then they raise the next generation of people who love this. That is so important to us.
Yeah, and the whole community that goes with it. So the construction industry and getting on board with that, and then resources that are available. And so, like you said, the more people that are just in the space and appreciating that will, again, lighten the load for everyone. There was a bit about Chris and Christine's daughter, Charlotte, being a construction baby, apparently, and that they were dating the baby photos based upon the tarps hanging behind them in the background. So was that in the book?
Yeah, so Chris and Christiane own a farmhouse in the Catskills in New York City. And yes, that's so cute. Yeah. I love that too. I know all my baby photos are like in rooms that I didn't even recognize at my parents' house by the time I was older because it looked so good, but I was like, this is what it looked like.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so we've got a couple minutes. I don't know if I want, Katie, if you want to come back, or if there's anything that Ethan and Elizabeth, you want to say about the book or Cheap Old Houses or anything that's coming soon.
Well, just buy the book for the holidays. We love this book. I think that you'll find it's just like the cozy hug you need to feel good about the house you live in. And the permission slip you need to kind of fall in love with your home, and just hope it's under every tree.
We post houses on Instagram every single day that are affordable houses that real people can buy. So enjoy it. It's like the home shopping network, real life on Instagram. Elizabeth is posting this stuff every single day. We have a team who does our newsletters and posts even more houses.
Christiana, Elise, Alex, and Kim, shout out.
Right. You know, we have our new TV show coming out in 2024, our series where we're showing people how to fix these old houses. So we restore and fix up 8 old houses with a amazing team on those projects. So we're excited to share that with everyone in 2024. And the amazing homeowners that came on this journey with us. And I think I'm trying to think what else.
You guys are like the nicest crowd ever.
I know. Well, thank you for your enthusiasm and sharing all this beauty from Loma Peterson. So go ahead, Katie.
Thank you. Yeah, no, this was great. And I want to echo, Elizabeth, your sentiment of just getting people in there, getting people in the door. We don't need the jargon. We want people to care about these places and help them along the way. So I feel like y'all embody that so beautifully. And Reagan, thank you so much for moderating today's conversation. Yeah, get the book. It's a great book. You will not regret it. Buy it for people on your holiday shopping list. Follow all of these lovely folks on Instagram because it is always inspiring. And yeah, thank you for tuning in tonight. Elizabeth, Ethan, thank you for sharing your story. Reagan, thank you for sharing yours and for moderating this conversation. Hopefully we'll have more in the future. This was really fun. So thank you guys.
Hi, Seven.
Hi, Seven.
He's like waving,
Yes.
make an appearance.
We love kids in the background. I have one over there too.
You guys have a good night.